Back in the day, there were 5 major anime series that got kids into anime, that weren't Dragon Ball at least. And these series were Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Digimon, Beyblade, and Bakugan. All 5 of these series would go on to be huge franchises and sell hella merchandise, with the range going from kids' toys and plushies to whatever the hell this is. Now, if you were born from like the mid-90s to like mid to late 2000s, I'd say, at least one of these series had you in a chokehold at some point during your childhood. For me personally, it was Pokemon, Digimon, and Beyblade. I never really got too much into Bakugan, and Yu-Gi-Oh! Was too complicated for my 7-year-old brain, so I didn't really get into it till I was much older. So Pokemon, Digimon, and Beyblade were the 3 that I stuck with. Pokemon has some of my favorite games of all time. Digimon, in my opinion, has a really underrated anime, at least for the first few seasons. But as you guys read by the title, the one I'll be talking about today is Beyblade. Now, Beyblade has multiple different series, and today I'll be talking about the best one, okay? I ain't talking about that old shit, and I ain't talking about that new shit. I'm talking about the best Beyblade series ever. Bay Wheels. I meant Beyblade Metal Saga. Hell yeah. So, Beyblade Metal Saga, probably the most iconic Beyblade series. I mean, everybody knows the intro. Beyblade, Beyblade, let it rip. That shit used to get me and so many other kids hyped back in the day. But that intro is just a small taste of how fire this show is. But to give a background for the show for those who don't really know, and just because why not, Beyblade Metal Saga is the 2nd generation of the Beyblade franchise. It would start off as a manga in 2008, and not even a full year later will receive an anime adaptation, which will be the main source for the series' success, along with the merchandise. The Metal Saga has 3 different parts. There's Metal Fusion, then Metal Masters, and then lastly Metal Fury. There is also a 4th part, and that's Shogun Steel, but in all honesty, nobody really cared about it. Like, who actually likes Shogun Steel? All jokes aside though, Shogun Steel really just felt like they were trying to drag the show on for no reason. Well, I mean, there is a reason, and that's obviously money. And it's very reflective in the show's quality, but it really just felt unnecessary considering the fact that Metal Fury ended things off pretty well. But I'm not really going to talk too much about Shogun Steel in this video. I'm mainly just focusing on the main 3. Now, with that being said, what exactly makes these 3 series so great? Well, to put it simply, Beyblade shows us the amount of enjoyment we can get from 2 spinning tops clashing into each other. But not only that, it gives us valuable lessons, like the true importance of teamwork and hard work, along with the ability to persevere through tough situations. All of this making Beyblade one of the most important and impactful series of our time. The end. Is what I would say if it was really that deep. See, the Metal Saga is pretty much like the 1st generation, but on crack, which is wild considering the 1st generation has some crazy moments itself, especially when it comes to the Beyblades and their abilities. But anyways, pretty much everyone in this universe has a Beyblade. Like in this show, Beyblade is more than just a sport. This shit really gets serious. Instead of guns, I'm pretty sure the cops in this universe just use Beyblades. Hell, even Moses himself used the Beyblade to part the Red Sea. Like, yo, this show is just straight up ridiculous at certain points. But that's part of the reason why I love it so much. Anyways though, the main characters of the show are Jinka, Kenta, Benkei, and Madoka. Now this obviously changes as the show goes on and more characters are introduced. Jinka's main Beyblade is the iconic Pegasus, Kenta's main Beyblade is Sagittario, Benkei has Tauros, and Madoka is the only one in the group that doesn't have a Beyblade, except for that one random ass time, but she's really just the mechanic of the group. Now my thoughts on these 4 characters are that they're fine. Madoka and Benkei are fine. Kenta's alright for like most of the series until Metal Fury, where he gets a lot of development, and Jinka as the main protagonist of the whole series is kind of mixed for me. On one hand, he has a lot of cool and badass moments, like even in his introduction he was standing on business, but on the other hand he makes a lot of questionable decisions sometimes. And I know it's a kids show and all, but oh my god, is that plot armor thick. One scene that fully demonstrates this is his fight with Damien. So this is near the end of Metal Masters, right? And Jinka's team is going against these guys named Team Starbreaker, and one of the guys on that team is named Damien. Now this guy was on demon time in this entire part of the series. Bro was soloing teams of some of the strongest bladers in the show, which sounds absolutely crazy, but it all makes sense once you find out what his Beyblade is. The Beyblade he possesses is Hell Kerbix, which is actually one of the few Beyblades I had in real life. Now this Beyblade is pretty broken. It's a stamina type Beyblade, meaning that it's able to spin for a really long time, but it's also able to turn into an attack type Beyblade. So not only is it going to stay in the ring for a while, but it can also deal some pretty serious damage. But this ain't even the craziest thing about it. Its final attack, and hear me out on this, is to literally summon the gates of hell, and it changes up your Beyblade spirits, finishing them off and giving them a big game over. So yeah, pretty damn broken. but yet somehow Jinka was able to beat this guy. These two were literally fighting in hell, and it seemed like Damien could have had a chance. But Jinka started going on this whole, oh, I'm doing this for my friends stick. And like 9 times out of 10, whenever a protagonist does this, some bullshit's about to happen. So Jinka pretty much breaks out of the chains and they end up back in the real world where Jinka defeats him. Now again, I know this is a kid's show, but even when I was a kid, I thought this was kind of dumb. Even with all that though, it's still one of my favorite fights from the series. Anyways though, with that aside, there are a few other characters that I think are worth mentioning. And the first one is Kyoya. Kyoya pretty much started off as Jinka's rival at the beginning, but he would eventually join Jinka's team and become one of the main cast members. His Beyblade is Leon, and it's probably my favorite defense type Beyblade. He has a pretty cool design, and honestly he's just one of my favorite characters. Tsubasa is also another character I think is worth mentioning. He has some really cool moments and great fights. I also really do like his Beyblade, which is Eagle. Another character that's really worth mentioning is Masamune. He was introduced in Metal Masters, and I ain't gonna lie, at first I thought he was pretty annoying, but as the series went on, I started enjoying him more and more. His Beyblade is Unicorno, and is also another one of my favorite Beyblades. And Masamune overall is just another one of my favorite characters, but not my favorite, because that goes to the next character I'm about to talk about, and that character is the iconic, the one and only Dragon Emperor himself, Ryuga. Man, I don't think y'all understand. I've been waiting this whole video just to talk about this man. If there were a list of reasons to go back and watch the show again, Ryuga would be number 1. Because there were just so many times where this dude was carrying the show on his back. And this may sound like I'm glazing, but if you've seen the show, you completely understand what I mean. Now, he may seem like a generic anime antagonist, and maybe he is, but this dude was truly an enjoyable character throughout the whole show. Just straight up Black Air Force energy. I mean, this dude was literally training in a volcano. You know how raw you gotta be to do some stuff like that? He also had one of the most overpowered Beyblades, being El Drago. During Metal Masters, Ryuga didn't even need to use a launch cord or nothing for this Beyblade. All he had to do was just throw it and it would spin on its own. And he was able to take out multiple bladers with just this. Like, bro is the true definition of aura. Honestly, he deserves his own video. But with the characters aside now, I want to talk about the actual story. The first part of the series is Metal Fusion. It starts off kind of episodic with the characters mostly just doing side quests. It also introduces us to most of the main characters. The first half also sets up the main antagonist group, which is named Dark Nebula. It's ran by this guy named Doji. They become a lot more important in the second half, which is mostly a tournament arc called the Battle Bladers, where Jinka and his team fights against Dark Nebula. We get a bunch of cool fights, with the most important one being Jinka versus Ryuga at the end, where El Drago pretty much enters Ryuga's body, and he basically gains this sort of dragon form, but before he can get any stronger, Jinka defeats him, and Dark Nebula is defeated, and that's pretty much the end of Metal Fusion. Next up is Metal Masters, and this is probably the most memorable part for me. It's pretty much a big world tournament between different teams. We get a bunch of great fights like Kyoya versus Jinka, Tsubasa versus Team Excalibur, Ryuga versus Jack, the Damien fights that I mentioned earlier, along with a bunch of others. Now, Metal Masters doesn't just focus on this tournament, because at the end, the main characters had to defeat this organization named Hades, and they basically took one of Masamune's friends and are trying to turn him into quote-unquote the perfect blader. Pretty much, to make a long story short, our main characters defeat this organization Hades, and we get Masamune's friend back to normal, and everything ends happily ever after. That is until Metal Fury. Now, Metal Fury doesn't really involve any tournaments or nothing. It basically gives us a bunch of lore about the Beyblade in this world. But basically in Metal Fury, the god of destruction Nemesis is about to be reborn, and 10 legendary bladers must be chosen to defeat him. Now, all 10 bladers have what's called a star fragment inside of each of their Beyblades, and 3 of these guys are Jinka, Kyoya, and Ryuga. These 3 are included in what's called the Bladers of the 4 Seasons, with Jinka representing fall, Kyoya representing spring, Ryuga representing summer, and Chris, who's a new character, represents winter. The rest of the legendary bladers are the solar system bladers, all of which are completely new characters. You have Yuki, whose planet is Mercury, Tithi has Venus, King has Mars, Dynamis has Jupiter, and Aguma has Saturn. Now, the last legendary blader is Rago, who is the main antagonist of Metal Fury and is the son of Nemesis. Now, this guy is pretty much the strongest character in the series. His Beyblade is the insane Diablo Nemesis, and he pretty much solos everyone. Even the GOAT Ryuga dies in battle. RIP to the realest character in the show. But his death isn't in vain, because his power goes to Kenta, which I forgot to mention, the two kind of had a student and teacher relationship throughout Metal Fury, and this power up that Kenta receives is sort of like the payoff. Anyways though, Rago and Nemesis pretty much merge together, and with there being pretty much no way to defeat this guy, it ends in sort of like a Boo Saga type of way, where every blader in the world sends their power to Jinka, and Jinka defeats Nemesis and Rago, finally giving us the end of the series. In all honesty, looking back at the Beyblade Metal Saga, it was pretty fun. Again, the series was really big for me and a lot of other people during our childhoods, and making this video had me really nostalgic, and rewatching some parts of the anime was a real trip through memory lane. And maybe now to many people it may just seem like another kids show, but back in the day, the Metal Saga was truly peak. Anyways though, with all that being said, if you made it this far, thanks for watching. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Currently at the time of this video, we're at over 300 subscribers, so it would mean a lot. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll catch you all in the next video.